rejected, and returned too many times. The silent alien girl finally speaks during the tense tribunal, her voice breaking years of forced silence. "I am not property," Nari declares, stunning the hearing officer as she articulates her sentience with unexpected eloquence. This courageous self-advocacy transforms her from disposable merchandise to recognized person, permanently altering her fate and challenging an entire system of exploitation. The Koran interplanetary market was infamous across 3 star systems, not for its exotic wares or rare technology, though it had those in abundance. It was known for selling things that shouldn't be sold, living cargo. Jalin wiped his brow as he navigated through the crowded marketplace. The air was thick with the scent of alien spices, engine oil, and the unmistakable odor of too many species pressed together in the sweltering heat. A human among aliens. His weathered jumpsuit marked him as a mechanic, just another spacer looking for parts. Authentic Earth antiques, genuine pre-expansion artifacts. A 4-armed vendor called out, waving what appeared to be a plastic lawn flamingo. Jalin smiled tightly and moved on. He hadn't come for souvenirs. The hyperdrive coupler on his repair ship was failing, and Koran, despite its reputation, was the only place within 3 jumps where he might find a compatible replacement without spending a fortune. That's when he saw it. A large, transparent container near the back of the market, tucked between stalls, selling counterfeit nav systems and second-hand air filters. Unlike the other merchandise, this container was labeled defective in bold red lettering across multiple languages. Inside sat a small figure, knees drawn to chest, skin a pale blue that seemed to absorb rather than reflect the harsh market lights. A child, an alien child. Jalin stopped, his search for parts momentarily forgotten. The container had clearly been designed for cargo, not living beings. A few air holes had been punched as an afterthought, and a small tray of what might have been food sat untouched in the corner. Looking for something specific. Earther? The merchant appeared beside him, a tall, gaunt creature with translucent skin that revealed shadowy organs beneath. "I have quality merchandise. Better than this reject." Jalin couldn't take his eyes off the child. "What's wrong with her?" He guessed at the gender, noting the delicate features beneath the grime and fear. The merchant made a dismissive gesture with 3 of his 7 fingers. "Defective merchandise. Returned too many times. Doesn't speak. Doesn't work properly. Being shipped to the salvage yards tomorrow." Salvage yards. Jalin knew what that meant. Places where living things were broken down to their component parts. Organs, genetic material, whatever could be sold. His stomach turned. "How much?" The words left his mouth before he could consider them. The merchant's translucent skin flushed a sickly yellow. "You want to buy this? Why?" "It's defective. The processing fee alone." "How much?" Jalin repeated, more firmly this time. The merchant named a sum that would have bought a decent sublight engine. It was extortion. But Jalin had expected nothing less. He transferred the credits without haggling, knowing that any delay might give him time to reconsider this impulsive decision. "Waste of good credits," the merchant muttered as he deactivated the container's lock. "No returns, understand? Once you take it, it's yours. All sales final." The child didn't move when the container opened, remaining curled in the same protective position. Eyes, large and liquid black, fixed on the floor. "Come on," Jalin said softly, extending a hand but not touching. You're coming with me." The girl, he was certain now it was a female of her species, didn't respond. After an awkward moment, Jalin stepped back, giving her space to emerge on her own. When she still didn't move, he spoke again, his voice gentle. "I won't hurt you, I promise." Something in his tone must have reached her because she slowly uncurled, revealing just how small she was, barely reaching his waist. She wore a shapeless gray tunic with a barcode printed across the chest, and her feet were bare, calloused from what must have been years without proper footwear. The merchant shoved a small data chip at Jalin. Ownership transfer, signed and verified. Remember, all sales final. Jalin pocketed the chip without looking at it. His attention focused on the child who now stood before him, swaying slightly, as if unused to standing for long periods. Her ribs were visible through the thin fabric of her tunic, and old bruises marked her arms. "My ship isn't far," he said, more to fill the silence than anything else. Do you want to walk, or should I carry you?" The girl gave no indication she understood. But when Jalin began walking slowly toward the market's exit, she followed, maintaining a careful distance between them. Her movements were stiff, mechanical, as if she expected to be struck for any misstep. Jalin's repair ship, the Patchwork, was docked in the lower-tier landing zone, a sprawling field of small to mid-sized vessels, most showing signs of hard use and hasty repairs. The Patchwork itself was no beauty, a 30-year-old Toshiba Martinez hauler that had been retrofitted as a mobile repair shop. Its hull was a patchwork of different metals, hence the name, but its systems were meticulously maintained. As they approached the ship, the girl hesitated, her eyes widening at the sight of the vessel. Jalin paused, giving her time. "This is my home," he explained, pointing to the faded lettering on the hull. "The Patchwork. I fix things, ships, droids, equipment. It's not much, but it's safe." He emphasized the last word, hoping she understood. After a moment's hesitation, she followed him up the boarding ramp. Inside, the ship was cluttered but clean. The main cargo hold had been converted into a workshop, with tools arranged on magnetic boards and parts organized in labeled bins. A small living area occupied the aft section, a kitchenette, a compact bathroom, and a sleeping alcove. The girl stopped just inside the airlock, her posture tense, eyes darting around the unfamiliar space. "You can look around," Jalin offered. "Nothing's off limits. Are you hungry?" No response, but her eyes flickered toward the kitchenette. "I'll make some food," he decided, moving slowly toward the small cooking unit. You can sit anywhere you like." He busied himself preparing a simple meal, reconstituted protein broth with actual vegetables he'd splurged on at the last port. Nothing fancy, but nutritious and gentle on stomachs, unaccustomed to regular meals. As he worked, he kept his movements deliberate and his posture relaxed, aware of the girl's wary observation. When the broth was ready, he poured it into 2 bowls and set one on the small table. "Here," he said, taking a seat and beginning to eat from his own bowl. "It's good. Not great, but good." The girl approached cautiously, her steps silent on the metal deck. She didn't sit but stood beside the table, watching Jalin eat for several minutes before reaching for her bowl. Instead of sitting, she took the bowl to the farthest corner of the room and crouched with her back to the wall, sipping the broth in tiny, measured portions, as if afraid it might be taken away. Jalin pretended not to watch, giving her the dignity of privacy. When he finished his meal, he spoke again, keeping his voice even. "I'm Jalin. I don't know if you have a name, or if you can understand me, but that's mine. Jalin." The girl gave no sign of comprehension, though her eyes remained fixed on him. "I need to get the ship ready for departure," he continued. "We can't stay on Corrin. It's not a good place. I know a neutral station in the Vega sector. We'll go there, figure things out." As he moved around the ship, preparing for takeoff, he kept talking, explaining what he was doing, naming parts and systems. The girl remained in her corner, bowl clutched in small blue hands, watching with unblinking attention. When the pre-flight checks were complete, Jalin returned to the living area. "We're taking off soon. You should probably sit somewhere secure. The acceleration can be rough." He gestured to the padded bench built into the wall, complete with safety restraints. After a moment's hesitation, the girl moved to it, setting her empty bowl aside. She didn't use the restraints, but she gripped the edge of the bench with white-knuckled intensity. "Good enough," Jalen murmured, heading for the cockpit. The patchwork lifted off smoothly, its engines protesting only slightly as they powered through Khura'in's heavy atmosphere. Within minutes, they were in orbit, and soon after that, the blue-green curve of the planet fell away behind them. When they reached cruising speed, Jalen set the autopilot and returned to the living area. The girl was exactly where he'd left her, still gripping the bench, her eyes now fixed on the small viewport that showed the starfield outside. "We're clear," he told her. "It'll be about 30 hours to the Vega station. You should rest if you can." He hesitated, then added, "I don't know what happened to you before. I don't know who hurt you or why they called you defective. But you're safe now. No one's going to put you in a container again." The girl's gaze shifted from the viewport to his face, her expression unchanged. But something in her posture seemed to ease, just slightly. Jalen nodded, satisfied with even this small progress. "I'll make up a place for you to sleep." He gathered spare blankets and a pillow from the storage compartment beneath his bunk and arranged them in the small alcove adjacent to the workshop, originally intended as a secondary storage area, but large enough to serve as a bedroom. "Here," he said when he was finished. "It's not much, but it's private. You can close the curtain if you want." He demonstrated, drawing the heavy fabric across the opening. "No one will bother you in there, and I'll be right out here if you need anything." The girl approached the alcove cautiously, examining the makeshift bed with an expression that might have been confusion or suspicion. Jalen stepped back, giving her space. "I'm going to sleep too," he told her. "It's been a long day. Tomorrow we'll figure things out tomorrow." He retreated to his own sleeping area, leaving the girl to decide whether to use the bed he'd prepared. As he lay down, fully clothed except for his boots, he wondered what madness had possessed him to spend nearly all his credits on rescuing an alien child. It wasn't that he regretted it. Seeing her curled in that container, labeled as defective merchandise, had stirred something primal in him. But what did he know about caring for a child, especially one who seemed traumatized, who didn't speak, who might not even understand his language? He fell asleep with these questions circling in his mind, no closer to answers than when he'd first seen her in the market. He woke to the sound of movement, soft, furtive scraping coming from the workshop. Instantly alert, he rose silently and padded to the doorway. The girl was there, examining his tools with cautious curiosity. She wasn't touching anything, merely looking, her head tilted in apparent concentration. When she sensed his presence, she froze, fear flashing across her face. "It's okay," Jalen said quickly. "You can look. I was just checking what the noise was." She remained motionless, watching him with those large, dark eyes. "Are you interested in tools?" he asked, moving slowly into the workshop. "I could show you how some of these work, if you want." No response, but she didn't retreat, which he took as a positive sign. "This is a molecular sealer," he explained, pointing to a device on the nearest workbench. "It repairs microfractures in hull plating. And this," he indicated a complex apparatus mounted on the wall, "is a diagnostic scanner. It tells me what's wrong with engines and life support systems." As he named each tool, the girl's gaze followed his gestures, her expression intent, encouraged. Jalen continued the impromptu tour, describing the function of each piece of equipment in simple terms. When he'd exhausted the contents of the main workbench, he paused, studying her. "Do you understand what I'm saying? Can you talk at all?" The girl lowered her eyes, a gesture that seemed deliberate rather than fearful. "That's okay," Jalen assured her. "You don't have to talk, but it would be good to have something to call you. Do you have a name?" Again, no response. Jalin sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Well, I can't just call you girl or kid. Would it be okay if I gave you a temporary name, just until we figure things out?" The girl's gaze lifted, meeting his briefly before skittering away. "I'll take that as a maybe," he said with a small smile. "How about—" "No, that's not right." He frowned, considering. "What about—" Before he could suggest anything, the ship's autopilot chimed, indicating a course correction was needed. Jalin moved to the cockpit, the girl trailing behind at a careful distance. As he adjusted their trajectory, he noticed her fascination with the navigation display, the holographic representation of their course through the star system. When he finished the correction, he tilted the display toward her. "See? We're here." He pointed to the small icon representing the patchwork. "And we're heading there." His finger traced their path to the Vega station. "It's a neutral port, independent, safer than Koran." The girl studied the display, her hand lifting slightly, as if she wanted to touch it but didn't dare. "Go ahead," Jalin encouraged. "You can't break it." After a moment's hesitation, she reached out, her slender blue fingers passing through the hologram. The projection rippled around her hand, and something like wonder flickered across her face. "It's just light," Jalin explained, "programmed to show information in a way that's easy to understand." The girl withdrew her hand, but her gaze remained fixed on the display. "You like maps?" Jalin asked. "Navigation?" When she didn't respond, he stood, motioning for her to follow. "Come with me. I want to show you something." He led her back to the workshop and rummaged through a drawer until he found what he was looking for. A small, metal badge, tarnished with age, but still recognizable as a navigator's insignia from the Earth fleet. "This was my father's," he explained, holding it out for her to see. "He was a navigator on long-haul transports. That's how I learned to fly and fix things." The girl examined the badge without touching it, her head tilted in that now familiar expression of curiosity. "Here," Jalin said, placing the badge on the workbench. "You can have it, if you want." He stepped back, giving her space to decide. After a long moment, she reached out and picked up the badge, turning it over in her small hands with surprising gentleness. "It's yours now," Jalin confirmed. "Maybe it'll help you find your way." The girl clutched the badge to her chest, and for the first time since he'd found her, her expression changed, just a slight softening around the eyes. But it was something. "I'm going to make breakfast," Jalin said, heading toward the kitchenette. "Real food this time, not just broth." He prepared a simple meal of reconstituted eggs and synthetic toast. Nothing fancy, but better than emergency rations. When it was ready, he set a plate on the table and took a seat with his own portion. This time, the girl approached more readily, though she still took her plate to the corner before eating. Jalin noticed she kept the navigator's badge close, setting it carefully beside her as she ate. "We'll reach Vega Station in about 24 hours, he told her between bites. "It's neutral territory, like I said. They have decent medical facilities. We should probably have you checked out when we arrive." At the word medical, the girl's head snapped up, fear evident in her posture. "Not like that," Jalin added quickly. "Just to make sure you're healthy. No tests, no prodding. I'll be with you the whole time." The fear in her eyes didn't diminish, but she returned to her meal, eating with the same careful precision as before. After breakfast, Jalin faced the reality of their situation. He had spent nearly all his credits on purchasing the girl's freedom. The patchwork had enough fuel to reach Vega Station, but not much beyond that. They would need money, which meant he needed to work. "I should check the job boards," he muttered, more to himself than to the girl. "See if there are any repair contracts available at Vega." He moved to the communications console and began scanning the interstellar job listings. The girl followed, watching as he scrolled through potential contracts. "Here's something," he said, pointing to a listing. "A merchant vessel needs drive coupling repairs. That's straightforward enough. And the pay is decent." The girl's gaze followed his finger, then shifted to the toolkit hanging on the wall nearby. "You want to see how it works?" Jalin asked, noting her interest. When she didn't object, he retrieved the toolkit and opened it on the workbench, explaining each specialized instrument. To his surprise, she moved closer, her attention fixed on his hands as he demonstrated the proper way to hold a micro-adjuster. "You want to try?" he offered, holding out the tool. After a moment's hesitation, she accepted it, her small fingers wrapping around the handle with unexpected confidence. Jalin guided her through the basic motion of calibrating the tool, and she mimicked him perfectly. "You're a natural," he said, genuinely impressed. "Have you done this before?" The girl didn't respond, but there was a new intensity in her focus, a hint of recognition that suggested this wasn't her first exposure to mechanical work. They spent the next several hours this way, Jalin demonstrating basic repair techniques, the girl watching and occasionally participating. She never spoke, never smiled, but her body language gradually relaxed, and once, when she successfully completed a simple calibration sequence, Jalin could have sworn he saw a flicker of pride in her eyes. As ship's evening approached, Jalin prepared another meal, noting with satisfaction that the girl now sat at the table to eat, though still maintaining a careful distance. "You know," he said as they finished their food, "I still don't know what to call you. I can't keep thinking of you as the girl." He considered for a moment, then had an idea. Rising from the table, he rummaged through a storage compartment until he found a small metalworking kit, a hobby he'd picked up during long solo jumps between ports. "Here," he said, returning to the table and laying out the tools. "I could make you a name badge, like this." He sketched a simple design on a scrap of paper, a rectangular tag with a blank space for a name. "If you know your name, you could tell me, or show me, or I could suggest some names, and you could pick one you like." The girl studied the sketch, then reached for a stylus. Jalin held his breath as she gripped it awkwardly, clearly unaccustomed to writing, and made a series of careful marks on the paper. When she finished, she pushed the paper back toward him. The symbols were unfamiliar, not any language Jalin recognized, but they were deliberate, precise. "Is that your name?" he asked softly. The girl nodded, just once, a barely perceptible movement. "I don't know how to read this," Jalin admitted, "but I can engrave it exactly as you've written it. Would that be okay?" Another nod, slightly more definite this time. Jalin set to work, using the metalworking tools to carefully transfer the alien symbols onto a small, silver plate. When he finished, he attached a simple pin to the back and presented it to the girl. "There," he said, "your name." She took the badge with reverent care, running her fingers over the engraved symbols. "Do you know how to say it?" Jalin asked. "In my language, I mean?" The girl hesitated, then opened her mouth. No sound emerged, but her lips moved in what might have been an attempt at speech. "It's okay," Jalin assured her. "You don't have to talk if you're not ready." He watched as she pinned the badge to her tunic, positioning it carefully over her heart, covering part of the barcode that had been printed there. "Well," he said with a smile, "it's nice to meet you, whatever your name is. I'm glad you're here." That night, the girl slept in the alcove Jalin had prepared. The curtain, partially drawn, closed enough for privacy, open enough to see the main cabin. Jalin noticed she kept the navigator's insignia and her new name badge close, clutched in one small hand even as she slept. The next morning, as they ate breakfast, the ship's proximity alert sounded, indicating they were approaching Vega Station. Jalin moved to the cockpit, the girl following as had become their routine. "There it is," he said, pointing to the structure that had appeared on the view screen. a massive wheel-shaped station orbiting a barren moon. Vega Station, one of the few truly independent ports in this sector. He initiated docking procedures, communicating briefly with station control to secure a berth. As they approached the docking ring, he glanced at the girl, noting her tension. "It's safe," he promised. "No one's going to try to take you. You're with me now, and I won't let anything happen to you." The girl's gaze met his, searching, and for the first time, Jalen thought he saw something beyond fear in her eyes, a tentative, fragile trust. The patchwork docked with a gentle shudder, the airlock seals engaging with a hiss of equalizing pressure. Jalen completed the shutdown sequence and stood, stretching after hours in the pilot's seat. "We're here," he announced. "Ready to go explore?" The girl hesitated, then reached for his hand, the first time she had initiated contact. Her fingers were cool against his palm, her grip tentative but determined. Jalen swallowed past the sudden tightness in his throat. "All right then," he said softly. "Let's go together." They stepped through the airlock into Vega Station, the girl's hand tight in his, the silver name badge gleaming on her chest, the first step in a journey that would change both their lives forever. Vega Station hummed with activity, a crossroads of species and cultures from across the sector. Unlike Koran, with its shadowy dealings and predatory atmosphere, Vega operated under a strict code of neutrality, a place where even traditional enemies could conduct business without fear of violence. The girl's grip on Jalen's hand tightened as they entered the main concourse, her eyes widening at the press of beings moving through the vast, cylindrical space. Overhead, transparent panels revealed the starfield beyond, while beneath their feet, recycled water flowed through visible channels, part of the station's sophisticated life support system. "It's okay," Jalen assured her, keeping his pace slow. "No one's paying attention to us. We're just two more travelers passing through." It wasn't entirely true. They did attract a few curious glances. Humans were uncommon in this sector, and the sight of a human male with a small blue-skinned child drew inevitable notice. But the station's unwritten code discouraged questions about other travelers' business, and most eyes slid past them after a moment's observation. Their first stop was the station's public records terminal, where Jalen inserted the data chip the merchant had given him. He needed to understand exactly what he'd purchased, what legal status the girl held under interstellar law. The terminal hummed as it processed the information, then displayed a series of documents. Jalen's stomach turned as he read through them. According to the records, the girl had been classified as specialized agricultural equipment during initial transport from her homeworld, a legal fiction that allowed living beings to be shipped as cargo. She had been sold 5 times in as many years, each owner returning her to the market with a different complaint: unresponsive, inefficient, communication malfunction. The final transfer, to Jalen, listed her as salvage material, with a notation that she had been deemed beyond repair. "This is wrong," Jalen muttered, anger rising in his chest. "You're not equipment, you're a person." The girl watched the screen, her expression unreadable. Jalen downloaded the documents to his personal device, then deleted them from the station's public access system. The fewer traces of their presence, the better. "Come on," he said, his voice gentle despite his anger. "We need to find you some proper clothes." They made their way to the station's commercial sector, where vendors from dozens of worlds offered goods ranging from essential supplies to exotic luxuries. Jalen's credits were limited, but he had enough for necessities. At a small shop specializing in children's clothing, they found several outfits that appeared to fit the girl's size and physiology. The shopkeeper, a multi-limbed being with compound eyes, asked no questions, merely packaged their purchases with efficient movements. "Would the young one prefer a toy?" the shopkeeper inquired, as Jalen completed the transaction. "We have items suitable for many species." Jalen looked to the girl, who had been examining a display of small mechanical puzzles. "Would you like one of those?" he asked. To his surprise, She nodded, pointing to a complex arrangement of gears and levers. Good choice, the shopkeeper approved. A thinking toy, for bright minds. Jalen added it to their purchase, rewarded by the careful way the girl held the package as they left the shop. Their next stop was the medical facility, a challenge Jalen had been dreading. As expected, the girl balked at the entrance, her body going rigid with fear. We don't have to go in if you really don't want to, Jalen told her. But it would be good to make sure you're healthy. I promise no one will hurt you. The girl remained frozen, her eyes fixed on the medical symbol above the door. Jalen crouched to her level, meeting her gaze directly. What if we just talk to the doctor? No tests, no equipment, just a conversation. If anything makes you uncomfortable, we leave immediately, okay? After a long moment, the girl gave a tiny nod. Jalen squeezed her hand reassuringly and led her inside. The facility was clean and quiet, with separate waiting areas for different species based on their environmental needs. A receptionist, humanoid, with scaled skin and elongated fingers, greeted them with professional courtesy. We need to see a doctor, Jalen explained. Just a general checkup, but it needs to be someone experienced with her species. He realized he didn't even know what species the girl belonged to. The receptionist studied the girl with clinical interest. Cerulean physiognomy, they noted. Dr. Alara has experience with humanoid variants. She is available now, if that suits. That would be fine, Jalen agreed, relieved at the lack of questions. Dr. Alara proved to be a tall, willowy being with silver skin and eyes that changed color as she spoke. Currently a calm blue that Jalen hoped would put the girl at ease. Welcome, the doctor said, her voice melodic. I understand you wish for a general assessment? Yes, Jalen confirmed. But she's been through difficult experiences. She's afraid of medical procedures. Dr. Alara's eyes shifted to a thoughtful green. I see. Then we shall proceed with caution and respect. She addressed the girl directly, her tone gentle. Little one, may I know your name? The girl touched her silver name badge but remained silent. She doesn't speak, Jalen explained. At least not since I've known her. I understand, Dr. Alara said, her eyes returning to blue. Many beings find voice after trauma. In time, perhaps. She gestured to a simple examination table. Would you sit here? I will explain everything before I do it. The girl looked to Jalen, who nodded encouragingly. With visible reluctance, she climbed onto the table, her back straight, her expression wary. True to her word, Dr. Alara narrated each step of the examination, using a handheld scanner that never touched the girl's body. She spoke directly to the child throughout, her manner respectful and unhurried. You are cerulean, she confirmed after several minutes. From the third moon of Seraph, I believe, a world known for its skilled technicians and engineers. The girl's eyes widened slightly at this information. She appears to be approximately 9 standard years by human reckoning, Dr. Alara continued, addressing Jalen now. There is evidence of malnutrition and minor mineral deficiencies, but no serious health concerns. I would recommend a supplemented diet for several months to address the deficiencies. We can do that, Jalen agreed, relief evident in his voice. There is one more thing, the doctor added, her eyes shifting to a concerned purple. I detected a subdermal implant at the base of her skull. It appears to be a neural suppressor, a device that inhibits certain brain functions. Jalen's relief vanished. What kind of functions? In ceruleans, such devices typically target the speech centers and emotional regulation. They are not legal in civilized space. Can it be removed? Jalen demanded, anger flaring again. Yes, but the procedure would require specialized equipment and expertise. I could refer you to a facility on New Geneva that... No, Jalen interrupted. No more facilities. Is there someone here, on this station, who could do it? Dr. Alara considered this, her eyes cycling through several colors. There is a medical technician in the lower levels who has experience with such devices. His methods are unorthodox, but effective. His name is Farron. Can you tell us how to find him? The doctor hesitated, then seemed to come to a decision. Level 32, Section 7. A repair shop with a blue door. Tell him Alara sent you. She turned to the girl. The choice must be yours, little one. The procedure is not dangerous, but it may be uncomfortable. The benefits, however, would be significant. The girl's gaze dropped to the badge pinned to her tunic. After a moment, she looked up and nodded decisively. Then it is settled, Dr. Alara said. For now, take these. She handed Jalen a small container of pale green capsules. Nutritional supplements, 1 per day until they are gone. They will help address the deficiencies. Thank you, Jalen said sincerely, for everything. As they left the medical facility, the girl seemed deep in thought, her steps measured, her hands still gripping Jalen's firmly. We don't have to see this Farron right away, Jalen told her. We can take some time. Get settled. The patchwork needs supplies anyway. The girl shook her head, pointing downward, toward the lower levels of the station. You want to go now? Jalen asked, surprised. A firm nod. All right, he agreed, if you're sure. They took a lift to level 32, a utilitarian area far from the polished commercial sectors. Here, the station's infrastructure was visible, pipes and conduits running along ceilings, recycled air moving through visible vents, the constant hum of machinery providing a background rhythm to their steps. Section 7 proved to be a narrow corridor, lined with small workshops and repair facilities. As Dr. Alara had described, one door was painted a distinctive blue, with no sign or identification beyond a simple numeric code. Jalen knocked, and after a moment, the door slid open to reveal a cluttered workshop. Tools and medical equipment shared space with engine parts and communication arrays, all arranged in what appeared to be organized chaos. Farron himself was a surprise. A small, round being with 4 arms and skin that seemed to be composed of thousands of tiny, shifting plates. 2 of his arms were currently deep inside an open panel, while a third held a diagnostic tool and the 4th adjusted a lamp. Yes, he inquired without looking up from his work. If it's about the atmospheric regulators. I told maintenance I'd get to them tomorrow. Dr. Alara sent us, Jalen explained, about a neural suppressor. This got Farron's attention. All 4 arms paused, and he turned to examine them with multifaceted eyes that reminded Jalen of insect species. Alara sent you. Interesting. His gaze settled on the girl. Ah, I see. Cerulean, neural suppressor. Likely targeted speech and emotional centers. Standard control mechanism for the less ethical traders. The girl met his gaze steadily, her chin lifting slightly. Can you remove it? Jalen asked. Of course, Farron replied, setting aside his tools and wiping his hands on a cloth. Simple procedure, 15 minutes. No permanent damage. Full neural recovery within days. He gestured to a chair in the center of the workshop. Sit, young one. I will explain the process. The girl approached the chair with determination, climbing into it without hesitation. Farron adjusted the height, then used one arm to retrieve a scanner, while another prepared a small tray of specialized tools. The device is here, he explained, showing them an image on the scanner. Attached to the brainstem. It works by interrupting neural pathways, like putting a dam in a river. Remove the dam. The river flows again. Will it hurt? Jalen asked, standing close to the chair. Momentary discomfort, Farron assured them. Nothing more. I use localized anesthesia and precision tools. He addressed the girl directly. You will feel pressure, perhaps a strange sensation, but not pain. If you want me to stop at any point, raise your hand. Understood? The girl nodded. Good, we begin. True to his word, the procedure was quick. Farron worked with surprising delicacy, his forearms moving in perfect coordination as he located the implant, deactivated it, and carefully extracted the small device from the base of the girl's skull. Throughout, he maintained a running commentary, explaining each step in simple terms. When he finished, he held up the removed implant, a tiny metallic disc no larger than a thumbnail. There, all done. The inhibitor is gone. The girl reached up, touching the back of her neck where a small bandage now covered the extraction site. Recovery varies, Farron explained, disposing of the implant in a secure container. Some experience immediate effects. Others take days for the neural pathways to re-establish themselves. Be patient. Thank you, Jalin said, transferring credits to Farron's account. What do we owe you? Farron named a sum that was surprisingly reasonable. Alara's referrals get a discount, he explained. Besides, I detest these devices. Removing them is satisfying. As they left the workshop, the girl walked with a new lightness, her steps more fluid, her posture less rigid. She still didn't speak, but Jalin caught her touching her throat occasionally, as if testing it. How do you feel? He asked, as they rode the lift back to the upper levels. The girl made a small gesture with her hand, a wave-like motion that somehow conveyed different, or perhaps changing. That's good, Jalin said, understanding despite the lack of words. Changes can be good. They returned to the patchwork to drop off their purchases and allow the girl to rest after the procedure. She changed into one of the new outfits they'd bought, a simple jumpsuit in deep blue that matched her skin tone, much more practical than the shapeless tunic she'd been wearing. After a light meal, she retreated to her alcove with the mechanical puzzle, drawing the curtain partially closed. Jalin took the opportunity to check the station's job boards again, securing a repair contract for the following day. Nothing complicated, just routine maintenance on a merchant vessel's life support system. He was reviewing the contract details when a soft sound from the alcove caught his attention. Not quite speech, but a humming, a tentative exploration of vocal cords long silenced. He pretended not to notice, giving her privacy for this moment of rediscovery. That night, as ship's lights dimmed to simulate evening, Jalin found himself reflecting on the strange turn his life had taken. A week ago, he had been a solitary mechanic, drifting from port to port, fixing ships and equipment for whoever could pay. Now he was responsible for a child, a traumatized, possibly endangered child from a species he knew almost nothing about. What would happen when her voice returned? Would she want to go home, to the cerulean moon Dr. Alara had mentioned? Did she have family there, people who were looking for her? Or had she been taken so young that she remembered nothing of her homeworld? These questions circled in his mind as he drifted toward sleep, unanswered but persistent. He woke to the sound of the communication console chiming, an incoming message marked urgent. Frowning, he moved to the console and accepted the transmission. The face that appeared on the screen was unfamiliar, a pale-skinned humanoid with sharp features and cold eyes. "Is this the vessel, Patchwork?" the being inquired, its voice precisely modulated. "Yes," Jalin confirmed cautiously. "Who's asking?" "My name is irrelevant. I represent Galvor Enterprises. It has come to our attention that you are in possession of property belonging to my employer." Jalin's stomach clenched. "I don't know what you're talking about." The being's expression remained unchanged. "A cerulean unit, designated T479. Our records indicate you purchased this unit on Koran 3 days ago. The sale was invalid, as the merchant in question did not have proper ownership rights. The unit is still legally registered to Galvor Enterprises." "She's not a unit," Jalin said, anger rising. "She's a child, a person." "Irrelevant," the representative dismissed. "Under Sector Trade Agreement 22B, cerulean workers are classified as specialized equipment, not sentient beings. My employer demands the return of his property. That's not going to happen, Jalin stated flatly. The being's eyes narrowed slightly. This is not a request. Galvor Enterprises has filed a formal claim with station authorities. You will surrender the unit or face legal consequences. Station security has been notified. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving Jalin staring at a blank screen. He swore under his breath, then turned to find the girl standing in the doorway of her alcove, eyes wide with fear. You heard that, he realized, not a question. She nodded, one hand rising to clutch her name badge. Listen to me, Jalin said, crossing to kneel before her. I am not giving you back to them. Not ever. Do you understand? Whatever happens, whatever they say, you're staying with me. The girl's eyes searched his face, seeking truth in his words. I promise, he added solemnly. We'll fight this. Together. A soft chime from the airlock interrupted the moment. Someone requesting entry. Jalin stood, positioning himself between the girl and the door. Stay behind me, he instructed, moving to the control panel. The external camera showed two station security officers, professional, expressionless, armed, but with weapons holstered. Jalin sighed and released the lock. The door slid open, revealing the officers in their gray uniforms, insignia indicating their authority on Vega Station. Citizen Jalin, the senior officer inquired. That's me. We have orders to escort you to Administrative Hearing Room 7. A property dispute has been filed against you by Galvor Enterprises. She's not property, Jalin stated firmly. She's a child, a person. The officer's expression remained neutral. That determination will be made by the hearing officer. Our orders are to escort you both. Now. Jalin glanced back at the girl, who stood rigid with fear. Her new clothes and name badge suddenly inadequate protection against the machinery of interstellar law. We'll go, he decided. But I want it noted that we're appearing voluntarily, and that I maintain custody of the Chiech, of her, throughout the proceedings. Noted, the officer acknowledged. Please come with us. As they were escorted through the station's corridors, Jalin's mind raced, searching for options. Vega Station prided itself on neutrality and adherence to interstellar law. If Galvor's claim was legally sound under the sector agreements, the station authorities would enforce it, regardless of moral considerations. They needed an advocate, someone who understood the intricacies of interstellar law and could argue their case. But Jalin knew no one on the station, had no connections or resources beyond his dwindling credits. The administrative hearing room was a sterile space, designed for efficiency rather than comfort. A raised desk dominated one end, where the hearing officer would sit. 2 tables faced it, one for each party in the dispute. Already seated at one table was the same cold-eyed being who had appeared on Jalin's view screen, accompanied by a taller figure whose expensive clothing and imperious bearing marked him as someone of influence. Galvor himself, Jalin presumed. Approach and be recognized, instructed a station official standing beside the hearing officer's empty chair. Jalin guided the girl to the unoccupied table, keeping his hand on her shoulder in what he hoped was a reassuring gesture. He could feel her trembling beneath his touch. State your designations for the record, the official continued. Jalin Merrick, independent contractor, Earth citizenship, Jalin responded. When the girl remained silent, the official raised an eyebrow. And the disputed property. She's not property, Jalin repeated firmly. Her name is... He gestured to the badge on the girl's chest, realizing he still couldn't pronounce the symbols engraved there. The unit is designated T-479, the cold-eyed representative interjected. It is the property of Galvor Enterprises, illegally obtained by this individual. Silence until recognized, the official reprimanded, though without much force. The hearing will commence when the officer arrives. They waited in tense silence for several minutes before a side door opened and the hearing officer entered. A massive, gelatinous being whose translucent body contained visible organs and neural networks. A species known for absolute neutrality and adherence to written law. "This hearing is now in session," the official announced. Administrative Officer Zahn, presiding over dispute case 47329, Galvor Enterprises versus Jalan Merrick, regarding ownership of designated unit T479. Officer Zahn settled behind the desk, appendages extending to activate the recording systems. "I have reviewed the initial filing," the officer stated, voice emanating from a small translator device. "Galvor Enterprises claims prior ownership of the disputed property. Present your evidence." The cold-eyed representative rose smoothly. "Officer Zahn, I am Varick, legal representative for Galvor Enterprises. Our claim is straightforward. The unit designated T479 was purchased legally by Galvor Enterprises from authorized breeders on Seraph III, 6 standard years ago. It was subsequently assigned to agricultural processing on Quran, where it was illegally removed from company property by a vendor without authorization." Varick presented a data chip, which the official inserted into a reader. "These documents confirm original purchase, ownership registration, and the unit's assignment history. As you can see, there is no record of authorized transfer or sale. The unit remains the legal property of Galvor Enterprises under Sector Trade Agreement 22B, Section 14, which categorizes cerulean workers as specialized agricultural equipment." Officer Zahn absorbed this information, neural networks visibly processing the data. "The documentation appears to be in order. Citizen Jalan, what evidence do you present to counter this claim?" Jalan stood, aware of his disadvantage but determined. "I purchased her, not it, her, from a merchant on Quran 3 days ago. I have the transfer of ownership documentation." He produced the data chip he'd received from the merchant. The official inserted it into the reader, and Varick immediately pointed out a discrepancy. "As you can see, officer, the merchant listed on this document had no authority to sell Galvor property. The sale was illegitimate." Officer Zahn's neural networks pulsed as the being considered this. "Citizen Jalan, do you have any evidence that the merchant had legitimate ownership or authority to sell the unit?" "No," Jalan admitted. "But that's not the point. The point is that she's not equipment or property. She's a sentient being, a child. She has a name. She can think. She can feel. Treating her as property is wrong, regardless of what some trade agreement says. Moral arguments are irrelevant in this proceeding," Officer Zahn stated dispassionately. "This hearing concerns only the legal ownership of the disputed property under applicable interstellar agreements. The classification of cerulean workers as specialized equipment is clearly established in Sector Trade Agreement 22B. Jalan felt desperation rising. "Then, I request an advocate familiar with interstellar law. This proceeding is unjust if I'm forced to argue without proper legal representation." "You had ample time to secure representation before the hearing," Varick interjected smoothly. "Your failure to do so does not constitute grounds for delay." "I was given no notice," Jalan protested. "Your client filed the claim and station security arrived within minutes." "Regardless," Officer Zahn stated, "the evidence presented supports Galvor Enterprises' claim. Unless you can provide countervailing evidence of legitimate ownership, I must rule in their favor." Jalan looked down at the girl, who stood rigid beside him, her eyes fixed on the floor. Everything was happening too quickly, spiraling out of control. In moments, she would be returned to Galvor, to whatever abuse and exploitation she had endured before. "She can speak for herself," he said suddenly. "The neural suppressor was removed yesterday. Let her testify. Let her tell you what Galvor Enterprises did to her." Varick scoffed. "The unit is incapable of speech. This is a documented characteristic, not a malfunction. Ceruleans used in agricultural processing have limited vocal capacity by design." "By design?" Jalan repeated incredulously. You mean by surgical modification? By implanting devices that suppress their natural abilities? That's not design. That's torture. These accusations are baseless and irrelevant. Varick dismissed. The unit's specifications are proprietary information of Galvor Enterprises. Officer Zahn raised an appendage for silence. Citizen Jalin, you claim the unit can speak. Is there evidence of this capability? Dr. Alara at the medical facility examined her yesterday, Jalin explained. She identified a neural suppressor implanted at the base of her skull. It was removed by a medical technician named Farron. They can both testify to its existence and purpose. Officer Zahn considered this. Interesting. However, even if such a device existed and was removed, it does not affect the ownership claim. Modifications to property do not change ownership status under interstellar law. She's not property, Jalin insisted, frustration mounting. Look at her. Talk to her. She's a person, not a thing. Enough. Galvor himself spoke for the first time, his voice surprisingly deep and resonant. This proceeding has gone on long enough. Officer Zahn, the evidence is clear. The unit belongs to Galvor Enterprises. I demand its immediate return. Officer Zahn's neural networks pulsed as the being prepared to render judgment. Based on the evidence presented, I find that the unit designated T-479 is legally the property of Galvor Enterprises under Sector Trade Agreement 22B. Citizen Jalin is ordered to surrender the unit immediately. No, Jalin said, placing a protective arm around the girl's shoulders. I won't do it. Station security will enforce the ruling if necessary, Officer Zahn stated dispassionately. The security officers moved forward, hands shifting toward their weapons. Jalin stood his ground, though he knew resistance was futile. They would simply stun him and take the girl anyway. I am not property. The voice was soft, slightly raspy from disuse, but clear and determined. The girl had spoken, her first words since Jalin had found her. The hearing room fell silent, all eyes turning to the small blue figure who now stood straight, chin raised, eyes fixed on Officer Zahn. I am not property, she repeated, each word more confident than the last. My name is Nari Serah. I was born on Seraph III, not bred. I was taken from my family when I was 3 years old. I am a person, not a machine. Officer Zahn's neural networks pulsed rapidly, processing this unexpected development. The unit speaks. I speak, Nari confirmed. I could always speak, until they put the device in my head. It hurt. It kept me from talking, from thinking clearly. They said I was defective because I wouldn't obey, because I kept trying to escape. She pointed at Galvor, her small hand steady. He bought me and others like me, children. He had the devices put in our heads so we couldn't speak, couldn't call for help. He made us work in the processing plants on Koran, sorting toxic materials with our hands because it was cheaper than using machines. Galvor's face darkened with anger. This is absurd. The unit is malfunctioning, obviously damaged by whatever amateur procedure this mechanic subjected it to. I am not an it, Nari stated firmly. I am a girl, a cerulean. My people are engineers and technicians, not slaves. What Galvor does is illegal under the Interstellar Rights Compact, which supersedes trade agreements. Jalin stared at her in amazement. How did she know about interstellar law? How was she suddenly so articulate after days of silence? Officer Zahn's translator emitted a series of clicks as the being considered this new information. The Interstellar Rights Compact does indeed prohibit the enslavement of sentient species. However, ceruleans are classified as non-sentient under Sector Trade Agreement 22B. That classification is based on false information provided by corporations like Galvor Enterprises. Nari argued. They bribed officials to classify us as equipment so they could exploit us. It violates the Compact's own definition of sentience, self-awareness, complex language, abstract thought, and moral agency. I demonstrate all 4 criteria by speaking to you now." Varric rose, his composure slightly shaken. "This is preposterous. The unit has clearly been programmed to make these claims. Officer Zahn, I move that this hearing be concluded immediately and the unit return to its rightful owner." "One moment," Officer Zahn interrupted, neural networks pulsing intensely. "The Interstellar Rights Compact does specify that any being demonstrating the 4 criteria of sentience must be accorded basic rights, regardless of prior classification. This presents a legal contradiction." "There is no contradiction," Galvor insisted. "The unit is property, as clearly established by the trade agreement." "I request a sentience evaluation," Nari said suddenly. "Under Article 7 of the Compact, any being claiming sentient status has the right to an impartial evaluation. If I pass, I cannot legally be classified as property." Officer Zahn's appendages moved in what might have been surprise. "The unit, the individual, is correct. Article 7 does provide for such evaluations. This is unprecedented." "This is absurd," Galvor sputtered. "The unit is making legal arguments it couldn't possibly understand. Someone has obviously tampered with its programming." "I understand because I listened," Nari explained, her voice growing stronger. "In the processing plant, they played legal briefings to the supervisors while we worked. I listened. I remembered. I couldn't speak, but I could think." She turned to Officer Zahn, her expression earnest. "I request sanctuary under Article 7 until the evaluation can be performed. Galvor has already demonstrated willingness to harm me to maintain control." Officer Zahn's neural networks pulsed with intense activity. After several moments, the being reached a decision. "The request for sentience evaluation is granted under Article 7 of the Interstellar Rights Compact. Until such evaluation is complete, the individual known as Nari Serra will remain in neutral custody. Neither Galvor Enterprises nor Citizen Jalin may remove her from station jurisdiction." "This is outrageous!" Galvor exploded, rising from his seat. "I will not stand for this mockery of established law. My property will be returned to me immediately, or there will be consequences for this station." "Your threat is noted," Officer Zahn stated calmly. "However, as a neutral administrative entity, Vega Station is obligated to uphold the Interstellar Rights Compact, which takes precedence over trade agreements when questions of sentience arise. The decision stands." Galvor glared at Nari, then at Jalin, his expression promising retribution. Without another word, he stormed from the hearing room, Varric hurrying after him. Officer Zahn turned to Jalin and Nari. "The sentience evaluation will be conducted tomorrow by a qualified panel. Until then, the individual Nari Serra will be placed in protective custody in the station's neutral quarters." "Can I stay with Jalin?" Nari asked, her voice suddenly small again. He saved me. I trust him." Officer Zahn considered this request. "Citizen Jalin has no legal standing as guardian or advocate. However, given the unusual circumstances, I will permit him to accompany you to the neutral quarters and remain as an observer. Station security will provide protection." "Thank you," Nari said simply. As they were escorted from the hearing room, Jalin looked down at the girl walking beside him, no longer silent, no longer merely following, but standing on her own, speaking for herself. "You were amazing in there," he told her quietly. "I had no idea you knew all that legal information." "I didn't know if I remembered it correctly," she admitted. "But when I heard them talking about sending me back to Galvor, I had to try. The words, they just came." "Well, they were the right words," Jalin assured her. "You've won us time, at least." "The evaluation will be difficult," Nari said, worry creeping into her voice. "Galvor will try to make me fail." "Then we'll be prepared," Jalin promised. "We have until tomorrow. We'll figure it out together." The neutral quarters proved to be a simple but comfortable apartment. 2 rooms with basic furnishings, designed to accommodate various physiologies. Security officers were stationed outside the door, ostensibly for protection, though Jalin suspected they were also there to ensure neither he nor Nari left before the evaluation. Once they were alone, Nari seemed to deflate, the confidence she had shown in the hearing room fading as exhaustion took its toll. She sat on the edge of the bed, shoulders slumped, hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Are you okay?" Jalin asked, sitting beside her. "I'm scared," she admitted. "If I fail the evaluation, they'll send me back to him. He'll put another device in my head, or worse." "You won't fail," Jalin assured her. "You're obviously sentient. You proved that today." "Galvor has money and influence," Nari said softly. "He can bribe evaluators, present false evidence. He's done it before." "Then we need to be ready," Jalin insisted. "Tell me everything you know about the evaluation process. What will they look for? How will they test you?" Nari took a deep breath, organizing her thoughts. "The standard sentience evaluation has 4 components, based on the criteria in the compact. They'll test for self-awareness, language complexity, abstract reasoning, and moral agency." "And you're confident you can pass all 4? Jalin asked. "Self-awareness and language should be easy," Nari said thoughtfully. "Abstract reasoning too. I was trained as a technician before I was taken, and I've been solving complex problems in the processing plant for years. Moral agency is harder to demonstrate in a test setting. They might present ethical dilemmas or scenarios." "We should practice," Jalin suggested. "I can ask you questions, present scenarios, help you prepare your responses." Nari nodded, some of her confidence returning. "Yes, that would help." They spent the next several hours this way, Jalin posing questions and scenarios, Nari responding thoughtfully, demonstrating not just intelligence but wisdom beyond her years. As they worked, Jalin found himself increasingly amazed by the girl's resilience and depth of understanding. "How did you survive all those years?" he asked during a break. "With the suppressor in your head, unable to speak, treated like equipment." Nari was quiet for a moment, her gaze distant. "I remembered," she said finally. "Every day. I remembered who I was, my name, my home, my family. I held on to those memories, even when the device made thinking difficult. I wouldn't let them take that from me." "Your family," Jalin echoed. "Are they still on Seraph 3? "I don't know," Nari admitted. "I was very young when I was taken. I remember my parents. They were engineers, working on atmospheric processors. We lived in a city of towers, with gardens on every level. But I don't know if they're still there, or if they're even alive." The pain in her voice was evident, and Jalin felt a surge of protectiveness. "If we win tomorrow, we'll try to find them. I promise." Nari looked up at him, her dark eyes searching his face. "And if we can't find them?" "Then you'll stay with me," Jalin said without hesitation. "For as long as you want." A small smile appeared on Nari's face, the first Jalin had seen. "I'd like that." As evening approached, exhaustion finally overtook Nari. The events of the day, combined with the emotional strain of speaking for the first time in years, had depleted her reserves. She fell asleep on the bed, still wearing her new clothes, the silver name badge clutched in one hand. Jalin covered her with a blanket, then sat in the room's single chair, preparing for a vigilant night. He didn't trust Galvor to respect the hearing officer's decision. The man had too much at stake. If Nari was declared sentient, it could potentially undermine his entire operation, leading to investigations and possibly criminal charges. His suspicions proved justified shortly after midnight, when a soft alert from his personal device warned of an unauthorized access attempt on the apartment's door. Someone was trying to override the security lock. Jalin moved silently to the door, positioning himself to intercept anyone who entered. He pressed the emergency call button beside the doorframe, summoning the security officers, who should have been stationed outside. The door slid open, revealing not the expected security officers, but two armed figures in nondescript clothing. Before they could react to Jalin's presence, station security appeared behind them, weapons drawn. "Hands visible," the lead officer commanded. "You are in violation of station regulations." The intruders hesitated, then slowly raised their hands. One of them glared at Jalin. "Galvor will get what belongs to him, one way or another," he hissed. "This isn't over." "Take them to detention," the security officer ordered his colleagues. To Jalin, he added, "We'll increase security for the remainder of the night. My apologies for the breach." "Thank you," Jalin said sincerely. When he turned back to the bed, he found Nari awake, watching with wide eyes. "They came for me," she said quietly. "They tried," Jalin corrected. "They failed, and they'll keep failing. I promised I wouldn't let them take you, remember?" Nari nodded, but her expression remained troubled. "Jalin, what if we win tomorrow, but Galvor doesn't stop? What if he keeps coming after us?" It was a question Jalin had been pondering himself. "Then we'll stay ahead of him," he decided. "The Patchwork may not be the fastest ship, but it's reliable. We'll keep moving, take jobs in different systems, stay under the radar until we can find somewhere truly safe." "A life on the run," Nari murmured. "For a while, maybe," Jalin acknowledged. "But not forever. If you're declared sentient, it changes everything. Galvor could face charges for what he did to you and the others. His influence has limits." Nari seemed to take comfort in this, settling back onto the bed. "We should rest. Tomorrow will be difficult." Jalin returned to his chair, but sleep eluded him. His mind was filled with contingency plans, escape routes, ways to keep Nari safe if the evaluation went against them. He would not let her be taken back to Galvor, regardless of what any hearing officer decided. Morning arrived too quickly. Station security escorted them to a different chamber than the previous day, this one larger, more formal, with a panel of 5 beings seated at a curved table, facing a single chair in the center of the room. Officer Zahn was present, along with 4 others of varying species. Jalin recognized a human woman among them, her silver hair and lined face suggesting advanced age and, hopefully, wisdom. "The sentience evaluation of the individual known as Nari Serah will now commence," Officer Zahn announced. "In accordance with Article 7 of the Interstellar Rights Compact, the evaluation will assess 4 criteria: self-awareness, language complexity, abstract reasoning, and moral agency." Nari stepped forward, her posture straight, despite the fear Jalin knew she must be feeling. She wore her blue jumpsuit and silver name badge, her only possessions besides the navigator's insignia Jalin had given her, which was pinned beside the badge. "Please be seated," the human evaluator instructed, her voice gentle but authoritative. Nari took the central chair, her feet barely touching the floor. Jalin was directed to a bench along the wall, close enough to observe, but not to interfere. "I am Dr. Amara Lin." The human evaluator introduced herself. "I specialize in xenopsychology and sentience assessment. These proceedings will be recorded and analyzed. Do you understand?" "Yes, Dr. Lin," Nari replied clearly. "Good. We will begin with basic identity confirmation. Please state your name and what you know of your origins." "My name is Nari Serah," she responded. "I was born on the 3rd moon of Seraph, in the city of Kalem. My parents were atmospheric engineers named Tarell and Mira Serah. I was taken from my home when I was 3 standard years old." "And how old are you now, by your reckoning?" 9 standard years, as measured by Earth chronology. Ceruleans mature at approximately the same rate as humans." Dr. Lin nodded, making a note on her datapad. The first criterion of sentience is self-awareness. Can you describe yourself to us, Nari? Not just your physical characteristics, but who you are as an individual. Nari took a moment to consider. I am a cerulean child who has survived difficult circumstances, she began. I am intelligent and observant. I value knowledge and memory. I find meaning in creating and repairing things. I experience emotions, fear, hope, gratitude, anger. I have preferences and dislikes. I enjoy solving mechanical puzzles and learning how systems work. I dislike confined spaces and being unable to express myself. And do you believe you have a future? Can you envision yourself beyond this moment? Yes, Nari said firmly. I want to find my family, or build a new one. I want to learn more about engineering and mechanics. I want to help others who have been treated as I was. I can imagine many possible futures, depending on the choices I make and the circumstances I encounter. Dr. Lin nodded, seemingly satisfied. The second criterion is language complexity. You are currently speaking Standard, but is this your native language? No, Nari replied. My native language is Cerulean. I learned Standard from my parents and later from listening to the supervisors in the processing plant. I can think in both languages, though it's easier for me to express complex ideas in Cerulean. Can you demonstrate some aspect of Cerulean for us? Nari spoke a series of melodic phrases. The sounds unlike any Jalan had heard before, flowing and rhythmic, with subtle tonal variations. That was a traditional Cerulean greeting, she explained afterward. It translates roughly as, I see you clearly, and offer clarity in return. Dr. Lin made another note. The third criterion is abstract reasoning. I'm going to present you with a hypothetical problem, and I'd like you to think through it aloud. What followed was a complex scenario involving resource allocation on a space station with failing life support. Nari worked through it methodically, considering variables, projecting outcomes, and ultimately suggesting a solution that balanced survival with ethical considerations. Your reasoning is sound, Dr. Lin acknowledged. Now we come to the final criterion, moral agency. This involves not just understanding right and wrong in the abstract, but applying moral principles to your own actions and accepting responsibility for their consequences. She leaned forward slightly. Nari, if you are declared sentient and therefore a person under law, what do you believe your obligations would be to others? What moral principles would guide your actions? Nari considered this carefully. I believe I would have an obligation to respect the autonomy and dignity of other sentient beings, she said slowly. To avoid causing harm when possible, and to repair harm when I've caused it. To stand against injustice, especially the kind I experienced. To help others who are vulnerable, as I was helped. She glanced briefly at Jalan before continuing. I've learned that kindness is a choice, not an obligation. When someone chooses to be kind, as Jalan did for me, it creates a responsibility to honor that choice by extending the same kindness to others when I can. The evaluation continued for another hour, with each panel member asking questions that probed different aspects of Nari's consciousness and character. Throughout, she remained composed, thoughtful, and articulate, demonstrating not just intelligence, but a depth of understanding that belied her young age. Finally, Officer Zahn indicated that the panel would deliberate. Nari was allowed to join Jalan on the bench while they waited, her small hand finding his for reassurance. You did brilliantly, he whispered. I've never heard anyone so eloquent. I said what I truly believe, she replied simply. Now we wait. The deliberation took less time than Jalan had expected. Within 30 minutes, the panel members returned to their seats, their decision apparently reached. The evaluation panel has reached a unanimous conclusion, Officer Zahn announced. Based on the criteria established in the Interstellar Rights Compact, The individual known as Nari Serra has demonstrated clear evidence of sentience in all four required categories: self-awareness, language complexity, abstract reasoning, and moral agency. Nari's hand tightened around Jalen's as Officer Zahn continued. As such, Nari Serra is hereby recognized as a sentient being with all attendant rights and protections under the Compact. This classification supersedes any prior designation under trade agreements or commercial regulations. The claim of property ownership by Galvor Enterprises is rejected as incompatible with sentient status. Relief washed over Jalen, so intense he felt momentarily lightheaded. Beside him, Nari remained perfectly still, as if afraid that any movement might somehow undo the panel's decision. Furthermore, Dr. Lin added, based on evidence presented during this evaluation, I am filing a preliminary report recommending investigation into Galvor Enterprises for potential violations of the Interstellar Rights Compact, specifically regarding the treatment of cerulean individuals. This matter will be referred to the appropriate enforcement authorities. Galvor, who had been sitting silently at the back of the chamber, rose abruptly. This is not over, he stated coldly. The economic implications of this ruling extend far beyond a single case. My legal team will appeal to the Sector Governance Board. That is your right, Officer Zahn acknowledged dispassionately. However, until such appeal is heard and decided, the current ruling stands. Nari Serra is recognized as a sentient being and is free to determine her own course of action. Galvor's gaze shifted to Nari, his expression hardening. Without another word, he turned and left the chamber, his departing footsteps echoing in the silence. Dr. Lin approached Nari and Jalen as the other panel members began to disperse. You should be aware, she said quietly, that Galvor's threat of appeal is not idle. He has significant influence with certain members of the Sector Governance Board. While I believe our ruling is legally sound, politics can sometimes interfere with justice. What are you saying? Jalen asked. I'm saying you should exercise caution, Dr. Lin replied. The ruling protects Nari from being claimed as property, but it doesn't guarantee her safety from those who might seek to silence her before she can testify about her treatment. We understand, Nari said, her voice steady despite the implicit warning. Thank you for your fairness, Dr. Lin. The doctor smiled gently. It was not a matter of fairness, but of truth. You are clearly sentient. Nari Serra, I hope you find the future you envision for yourself. She hesitated, then added, if you ever wish to pursue formal education, contact me. I have connections with several institutions that would welcome a mind like yours. After Dr. Lin departed, Jalen and Nari were escorted back to the patchwork by station security. The threat of Galvor's retaliation hung over them, but for the moment, at least, they were safe. Once aboard the ship, Nari seemed to relax, the tension of the past 2 days finally easing from her small frame. She moved through the familiar space with new confidence, touching tools and equipment with a sense of ownership that hadn't been there before. What happens now? She asked, turning to Jalen. He considered the question carefully. That depends on what you want. We could try to find your family on Seraph 3, or we could stay on the move for a while. Take repair jobs in different systems until the situation with Galvor settles. Nari touched her name badge thoughtfully. I want to find my family, she said after a moment. But I also know that Galvor won't stop pursuing us. He has too much to lose if others like me come forward. So we stay mobile, Jalen concluded. Take jobs, earn credits, keep a low profile. Meanwhile, we can make inquiries about your family through secure channels. Dr. Lin might be able to help with that. And if we find them, then you'll have a choice to make, Jalen said honestly. Stay with them, or... He trailed off, suddenly uncertain. Or stay with you, Nari finished for him. That would be my choice to make. Yes, Jalen agreed, relieved that she understood. Your choice, always. They spent the next few days preparing the patchwork for departure. Jalen accepted a series of small repair contracts on the station, earning enough credits to resupply the ship and establish a modest reserve. Nari accompanied him on these jobs, her natural aptitude for mechanics quickly becoming apparent. On their fourth day at Vega Station, they received an unexpected visitor, Farron, the medical technician who had removed Nari's neural suppressor. "I heard about the ruling," he said without preamble when Jalen admitted him to the ship. "Impressive. Not many challenge Galvor and win." "We had truth on our side," Nari replied, her confidence growing daily. Farron made a sound that might have been laughter. "Truth is rarely enough in this sector. You had courage as well." He turned to Jalen. "But courage won't stop a plasma blast. Galvor's reputation is well earned. He doesn't forgive those who cost him profit." "We're leaving soon," Jalen assured him. "Taking jobs in different systems, staying ahead of any trouble." "Good strategy," Farron approved. "But I didn't come just to warn you. I came to help." He produced a small device from one of his many pockets. "This is a neural shield. Experimental technology, but effective. It will prevent the implantation of any control devices similar to the one I removed." Nari eyed the device with understandable wariness. "How does it work?" "It creates a localized field that disrupts the specific frequencies used by neural suppressors," Farron explained. "Completely harmless to biological systems, but renders the suppressor technology inoperable within a short radius." "Why give this to us?" Jalen asked, suspicious of unexpected generosity. Farron's plated skin shifted in patterns that suggested complex emotions. "I have seen too many like her," he said finally. "Children with devices in their heads, their autonomy stolen. I remove what I can, but for everyone I help, 10 more are implanted. This," he gestured to Nari, "this ruling could change things. If she survives to testify, to bring evidence against Galvor and others like him." He pressed the device into Nari's hands. "So you survive. You testify. You change things." "I will," Nari promised, accepting the shield with solemn determination. After Farron departed, they accelerated their preparations for leaving the station. The neural shield was a reminder of the danger they still faced, a danger that would follow them until Galvor was somehow neutralized. They departed Vega Station the following morning, slipping away with minimal notice, their destination known only to themselves. Jalen had accepted a contract to repair atmospheric processors on a small mining colony 2 systems away, work that would take them far from Galvor's usual sphere of influence. As the patchwork cleared the station's docking ring, Nari sat in the co-pilot seat, watching the stars emerge as they left the station's shadow. "I never saw the stars from the processing plant," she said quietly. "Just machinery and walls. Sometimes I forgot they existed." Jalen glanced at her, struck by the simple profundity of her observation. "They were always there," he said, "even when you couldn't see them." "Like me," Nari replied. "I was always there, inside, even when I couldn't speak or show myself." "Yes," Jalen agreed, "exactly like that." They settled into a rhythm over the following months, moving from system to system, taking repair contracts that kept them mobile and financially stable. Nari's skills developed rapidly, her natural aptitude for mechanics blossoming under Jalen's guidance. Soon, she was handling simple repairs independently, her small hands deft and precise in ways that sometimes surpassed Jalen's abilities. They made discreet inquiries about her family on Seraph III, but information was scarce. The atmospheric engineering facility where her parents had worked had been shut down years ago, its personnel records mysteriously purged. It was as if someone had deliberately erased all traces of the Seraph family. Despite this disappointment, Nari thrived. The traumatized, silent child from the Corin market was replaced by a thoughtful, articulate young engineer whose curiosity and intelligence constantly impressed Jalen. She still had moments of withdrawal, still woke sometimes from nightmares of containment and silence. But these episodes grew less frequent as time passed. They were careful to avoid sectors where Galvor Enterprises had strong influence. But news occasionally reached them through the interstellar communications network. The investigation Dr. Lin had initiated was proceeding slowly, hampered by bureaucratic obstacles and jurisdictional disputes. Galvor's appeal to the Sector Governance Board had been accepted for consideration, though no ruling had yet been issued. 6 months after leaving Vega Station, they were contracted to repair life support systems on an aging research outpost orbiting a gas giant. The work was routine, and the outpost's isolation offered a welcome respite from their constant vigilance. It was there that they encountered another Cerulean for the first time since Nari's liberation. He was working as a maintenance technician on the outpost, one of a dozen staff keeping the facility operational. Like Nari, he wore a uniform with a barcode printed across the chest. Unlike Nari, his movements were stiff, his expression vacant, his responses mechanical. "He has a suppressor," Nari whispered to Jalin when they first saw him in the outpost's main corridor. "I can tell by the way he moves, the emptiness in his eyes. That was me, before." Jalin studied the adult Cerulean with concern. "Do you think Farron's shield would work for him too?" "If we can get close enough," Nari confirmed. "But we'd need to remove the suppressor afterward, and I don't know if we have the right tools." They observed the Cerulean for several days as they worked on the life support repairs. He performed his duties with mechanical efficiency, never speaking beyond necessary acknowledgments, never showing any emotion or individual initiative. On their 4th day at the outpost, Nari approached Jalin with determination in her eyes. "We have to help him," she stated. "We can't leave him like this." "It could be dangerous," Jalin cautioned. "If whoever owns him discovers what we've done, it could lead Galvor right to us." "I know," Nari acknowledged. "But look at him, Jalin. That was me. That emptiness, that absence of self. No one deserves to live that way." Jalin sighed, knowing she was right. "All right, but we need a plan. We can't just approach him in the corridor and activate the shield." They devised a strategy to intercept the Cerulean during his maintenance rounds in a secluded section of the outpost. Nari would activate Farron's shield, hopefully disrupting the suppressor long enough to establish communication. Then, they would need to convince him to come with them to the patchwork, where they had a makeshift medical bay, equipped with basic surgical tools. The plan worked better than they had dared hope. When Nari activated the shield near the adult Cerulean, the effect was immediate. He stumbled, clutching his head, his eyes suddenly focusing with awareness. "Who?" he gasped, his voice raspy from disuse. "What is happening?" "You have a neural suppressor in your head," Nari explained quickly. "This device is temporarily blocking it. We can help you remove it permanently, but you have to come with us now." The Cerulean stared at her, recognition dawning. "You are like me, but free." "Yes," Nari confirmed. "I was like you. Now I'm not. You don't have to be either." It took little more persuasion to convince him to follow them to the patchwork. Once aboard, Jalin used the medical scanner to locate the suppressor, identical to the one Farron had removed from Nari, positioned at the base of the skull. "I've seen Farron do this," Jalin muttered, studying the scanner's results. "But I'm not a medical technician." "I remember every step," Nari assured him. "I can talk you through it." The procedure was tense but successful. Working together, with Nari providing precise instructions based on her perfect recall of Farron's techniques, they managed to deactivate and remove the suppressor. The adult Cerulean, who identified himself as Davin, wept when it was done, overwhelmed by the return of his full consciousness. "How long?" Nari asked him gently, as he recovered in the ship's living area. 8 years, Davin replied, his voice stronger now. "I was taken from a research facility on Seraph III. I was an environmental engineer. They put the device in my head and shipped me to various outposts as maintenance equipment. Seraph 3, Jalin repeated, exchanging a glance with Nari. Did you know the Seraph family? Engineers who worked on atmospheric processors? Davin's eyes widened. Tyrell and Mira Sarah? Of course. They were colleagues. They disappeared after the corporate takeover of our facility, along with their daughter. His gaze fixed on Nari. You're their child. Nari, you have Mira's eyes. Nari's breath caught. They're alive? Do you know where they are? They were alive when I was taken, Davin said cautiously. They had been reassigned to a classified project on one of the outer moons. It was rumored to be a cover for their elimination, but I never believed it. Terrell and Mira were too valuable for that. Valuable how? Jalin asked. They were developing a new atmospheric processing system, Davin explained. More efficient, more sustainable than anything currently in use. The corporations wanted the technology, but Terrell and Mira insisted it should be open source, available to all worlds that needed it. When their daughter disappeared, they became compliant, working on whatever they were told, hoping to find her someday. Nari's face was a mixture of hope and anguish. They're looking for me, and I'm looking for them, and neither of us can find the other. But now we have more information, Jalin pointed out. Davin, do you know which moon they were sent to? Seraph 7, Davin replied. The ice moon. There's a research facility buried beneath the surface. It was more than they had learned in 6 months of careful inquiries. But it also presented a new dilemma. Seraph 7 was deep in territory controlled by the same corporations that had classified Ceruleans as equipment, the same entities that would support Galvor's appeal. We can't just fly to Seraph 7, Jalin said later, after Davin had fallen asleep, exhausted from the procedure and the emotional aftermath. It would be walking into a trap. I know, Nari agreed, though the longing in her voice was evident. But now we know they're alive. Jalin, they're looking for me. We have to find a way. They spent the night discussing possibilities, strategies, potential allies who might help them navigate the dangerous territory between their current position and Seraph 7. By morning, they had the outline of a plan, risky, but not impossible. First, they would need to leave the research outpost without raising suspicions about Davin's disappearance. This proved simpler than expected. The outpost administrator, when informed that they had discovered critical faults in the life support system requiring specialized parts, was eager to expedite their departure and return. The containment seals on the primary exchanger are degraded beyond safe parameters, Jalin explained, with appropriate technical jargon. We need to fabricate replacements on our ship and install them before the system fails. It's a 2-person job, so we'll need your maintenance technician to assist. The administrator, more concerned with maintaining life support than tracking the movements of what he considered equipment, agreed readily. Within hours, they were clear of the outpost, Davin officially on loan for the complex repair work. Their next step was to contact Dr. Lin, whose offer of assistance Nari had never forgotten. Using a secure communication channel and a routing protocol that would be difficult to trace, they sent a carefully worded message explaining their situation and requesting information about Seraph 7. Dr. Lin's response came 3 days later, as they drifted in the shadow of a planetoid, conserving fuel and monitoring communications. Seraph 7 facility is real, her message confirmed. Classified research, heavy security. Corporate ownership obscured through shell companies, but traces lead to Galvor Enterprises among others. Approach impossible through official channels. However, facility requires regular supply shipments. Next, scheduled in approximately 1 standard month. Sending coordinates and identifiers separately. Exercise extreme caution. Investigation proceeding but slowly. Galvor appeal still pending. Lin. The coordinates arrived as promised. along with the identification codes for the supply ship scheduled to service the Seraph 7 facility. It wasn't much, but it gave them a potential window of opportunity. "We could intercept the supply ship," Jalin suggested, as they studied the information. "Use their codes to approach the facility." "Too risky," Davin countered. He had regained much of his strength and all of his sharp intellect in the days since his liberation. Supply ships are monitored continuously. Any deviation from course or schedule would trigger immediate security protocols. "What about hiding aboard the supply ship?" Nari proposed. "If we could get onto it before it reaches Seraph 7, we could disembark during the delivery." Jalin considered this. "That could work, but we'd need to know where the ship originates, its route, where we could intercept it safely. And we'd need a way to hide from security scans," Davin added. "Most supply vessels to classified facilities have automated security systems that scan for unauthorized personnel. They spent days refining the plan, identifying potential interception points, and developing countermeasures for the security systems they were likely to encounter." Davin's knowledge of corporate security protocols proved invaluable, as did Nari's growing expertise with electronic systems. The patchwork itself would need modifications, enhanced stealth capabilities, improved short-range sensors, and a secure docking mechanism that would allow them to attach to the supply ship without detection. Jalin threw himself into these technical challenges, grateful for work that kept his hands busy while his mind processed the risks they were undertaking. Nari worked alongside him, her skills now complementing his own. Together, they transformed the aging repair vessel into something more adaptable, more capable of the mission ahead. They named the upgraded ship Second Light, Nari's suggestion, a reference to the second chance at life they had all been given. As the day of the supply ship's departure approached, final preparations consumed their attention. They had tracked the vessel, the Horizon Supplier, to its origin point at a commercial spaceport on Vega Prime, the central planet of the system that also housed Vega Station. Their plan was to intercept it 3 days into its journey, after it cleared the heavily monitored central shipping lanes, but before it entered the restricted zone around the Seraph system. The interception went exactly as planned, almost too perfectly, raising Jalin's suspicions. The Second Light's enhanced sensors detected the Horizon Supplier right where they expected, following its programmed course without deviation. Using the stealth systems they had installed, they approached from the vessel's sensor blind spot and attached to an emergency access port near the aft cargo hold. Davin, whose knowledge of corporate vessels was most extensive, led the boarding party. They cut through the access port's outer seal using a modified repair tool, careful to create an opening that could be resealed without obvious damage. Within minutes, they were inside the cargo hold, surrounded by containers of supplies bound for the research facility. "Too easy," Jalin muttered, surveying the unguarded hold. "Where are the security measures?" "Internal sensors are active," Davin confirmed, checking a handheld scanner. "But they're focused on the containers, not the space between them. Standard anti-theft protocol, not anti-intrusion." "They're not expecting anyone to board mid-journey," Nari reasoned. "Why would they? No one knows the facility exists, let alone its supply schedule." "No one except Dr. Lin," Jalin pointed out. "And now us, and anyone they might have told." They established a hiding place among the cargo containers, using sensor-dampening material they had brought to create a small space, shielded from routine scans. It would be a cramped 3 days to Seraph 7, but they had endured worse discomforts. The journey passed without incident, each of them taking turns to sleep while the others maintained watch. They had brought minimal supplies, emergency rations, water reclamation units, and the essential tools for their mission. Most important was Farron's neural shield, which Nari kept secured in a pouch at her waist, and a small but powerful communication device capable of piercing most signal jammers. As they approached Seraph 7, they felt the ship decelerate, its engines shifting to landing configuration. Through a small viewport in the cargo hold, they caught glimpses of the ice moon, a barren white sphere against the blackness of space, its surface unmarked by visible structures. "The facility is subterranean," Davin reminded them. "Entrance likely disguised as a natural formation. Prepare for descent." The landing was smooth, the cargo hold pressurizing as external doors prepared to open. They retreated deeper into their hiding place, waiting for the inevitable unloading process to begin. When the cargo doors opened, cold air rushed in, the bitter chill of Seraph 7's surface atmosphere. Through gaps in the containers, they observed a loading dock carved from ice and reinforced with transparent alloy, staffed by figures in environmental suits and, Nari noted with a pang, several ceruleans wearing the familiar barcode uniforms. "More of our people," she whispered to Davin, "being used as equipment." "Once we find your parents, we'll help them too," he promised. "But we must be patient." They waited until most of the cargo had been unloaded, then slipped from their hiding place, using the remaining containers as cover. The environmental suits, hanging near the airlock, provided perfect disguises, anonymous figures indistinguishable from the facility's regular personnel. Once suited, they separated as planned. Davin would access a terminal and locate Tyrell and Mira Sarah within the facility's systems. Jalin would create a diversion in the power distribution center if necessary. Nari, who would be recognized by her parents, would make the actual contact once they were located. The facility was larger than they had anticipated, a vast complex of laboratories, living quarters, and support systems buried beneath the ice. Nari moved through the corridors with deliberate purpose, mimicking the efficient stride of the workers around her. The environmental suit concealed her small stature reasonably well, though she had to be careful not to stand too close to the adult workers. Davin made contact through their secure comm channel after 20 minutes. "Found them," he reported tersely. "Section 14, Laboratory 7. Currently active. 2 guards posted. Automated security minimal." "Any complications?" Jalin inquired from his position near the power center. "Facility on standard operations," Davin confirmed. "No unusual security protocols detected. Proceed as planned." Nari adjusted her course, following the facility's logical numbering system towards Section 14. Her heart raced beneath the environmental suit, a mixture of anticipation and fear. After years of separation, after all she had endured, she was minutes away from reuniting with her parents. Laboratory 7 was marked by a simple numeric designation, its entrance flanked by 2 security personnel as Davin had reported. Nari paused at a junction, considering her approach. The direct method seemed most logical. The guards would have no reason to stop a suited worker entering a laboratory. She walked forward with confidence, nodding to the guards as she approached the door. One of them stepped forward, hand raised. "Identification," he requested. Nari hadn't anticipated this. She froze, uncertain how to respond. "Maintenance," she said finally, lowering her voice to disguise its childlike quality. "Environmental system check." The guard hesitated, then consulted a small device on his wrist. "No maintenance scheduled for Laboratory 7 today." "Emergency override," Nari improvised. "Sector supervisor detected pressure anomalies in this section. All labs being checked." It was a plausible explanation, but the guard remained suspicious. "Wait here," he instructed, turning to use the communication panel beside the door. Nari knew she had seconds before her deception was discovered. She reached into the pouch at her waist, fingers closing around Farron's neural shield. It wasn't meant for this purpose, but perhaps. She activated the device, directing it toward the security panel. As she had hoped, the shield's disruption field affected not just neural suppressors, but other electronic systems operating on similar frequencies. The panel sparked, its display flickering before going dark. The guard turned back, alarmed by the malfunction. In that moment of distraction, Nari slipped past him, through the laboratory door that had unlocked when the security system failed. Inside was a vast space filled with complex equipment, atmospheric processors in various stages of development, testing chambers, diagnostic tools, and workstations. And there, at the central console, two cerulean adults bent over a holographic display, their movements synchronized as they manipulated the projected data. Nari froze, the breath catching in her throat. Even after 6 years, even with their backs turned, she recognized them instantly. Her parents, Terrell and Mira Sarah. Alive, as Davin had said, but working under the same oppression she had endured, neural suppressors controlling their actions, limiting their awareness. She moved forward slowly, removing her helmet as she approached. "Mother," she called softly. "Father?" They didn't react, continuing their work with mechanical precision. Of course, the suppressors prevented them from responding to anything outside their programmed tasks. Nari activated Farron's shield again, directing it toward them. The effect was immediate. Both ceruleans stumbled, their coordinated movements suddenly disrupted. They turned, confusion giving way to awareness as the shield's field penetrated the suppressor's influence. "What?" Terrell began, his voice rough from disuse. Then his eyes focused on Nari, widening with disbelief. "It cannot be." "Nari?" Mira whispered, one hand reaching out tentatively. "Our daughter?" "It's me," Nari confirmed, tears welling in her eyes. "I found you." The laboratory door slid open behind her, the guards responding to the security malfunction. Nari turned, fear replacing joy as she realized they were trapped. But it wasn't the guards who entered. It was Jalin, his environmental suit discarded, a determined expression on his face. "We need to move," he announced. "Davin's been discovered. Facility security is mobilizing." Terrell and Mira stared at the human with confusion. "Who is this?" Terrell demanded, his protective instincts overriding his disorientation. "What is happening?" "This is Jalin," Nari explained quickly. "He saved me. He helped me find you. But we have to leave now, before security captures us all." "Leave," Mira repeated, as if the concept was foreign. "Leave the facility." "Yes," Nari insisted. "You've been controlled, just as I was. Neural suppressors in your heads, making you work for them against your will. We can remove them, but we have to get to our ship first." Understanding dawned in her parents' eyes, followed by determination. "The suppressors," Terrell said, touching the back of his neck. "That explains the missing time, the fragments of memory. We knew something was wrong, but couldn't focus long enough to understand what." "We thought you were dead," Mira added, tears streaming down her blue face. "They told us you had died in an accident. It was the only reason we continued working for them." "Later," Jalin interrupted urgently. "Explanations later. Now we need to move. The supply ship departs in 30 minutes. If we miss it, we're trapped here." They moved quickly through the facility, avoiding main corridors, using Farron's shield to disrupt security systems when necessary. Terrell and Mira, despite years of suppression, recovered their agency quickly, their natural intelligence and adaptability asserting itself as the shield's effect penetrated deeper into the suppressor's programming. They reached the loading dock, just as alarms began to sound throughout the facility. The supply ship was there, its engines warming for departure, its cargo now fully exchanged. "Where's Davin?" Nari asked anxiously as they approached the ship. "I don't know," Jalin admitted. "He was supposed to meet us here after accessing the central database." As if summoned by their concern, Davin appeared from a side corridor, moving with purpose despite an obvious limp. "Go!" he shouted when he saw them. "Security right behind me!" They rushed toward the supply ship, Jalin leading the way to the access port they had used to board initially. As they reached it, the first security personnel appeared on the loading dock, weapons drawn. "Halt!" a voice commanded over the facility's communication system. "Unauthorized personnel, Surrender immediately. Jalin ignored the command, working quickly to open the access port. Terrell and Mira followed Nari inside, with Davin bringing up the rear, still limping but moving with determination. "They're boarding the supply vessel," another voice shouted. "Lock it down!" But they were already inside, Jalin sealing the access port behind them as the ship's engines roared to full power. The vessel shuddered as clamps released, beginning its ascent from the moon's surface. "We need to get to the second light," Jalin reminded them, leading the way through the cargo hold to where their ship remained attached to the emergency access port. "Once we clear the atmosphere, we detach and make a run for it." "They'll pursue," Davin warned, checking a scanner he had acquired somewhere in the facility. "I downloaded their security protocols. Standard procedure is immediate pursuit of any unauthorized departure." "The second light has been modified," Jalin assured him. "We have a few tricks they won't expect." They reached their ship and boarded quickly, Jalin moving immediately to the cockpit to prepare for detachment. Nari guided her parents to secure positions, explaining briefly about the neural suppressors and Jalin's plan to remove them once they were safely away. "You found us," Mira marveled, touching Nari's face as if to confirm she was real. "After all this time, against impossible odds." "I never forgot you," Nari told them. "Even when the suppressor was active, I held on to your memory. It kept me. The ship lurched as the supply vessel cleared Seraph 7's atmosphere, accelerating toward space. Jalin's voice came over the internal comm system. "Preparing for detachment. Everyone secure?" "Ready," Davin confirmed from the engine room, where he had gone to monitor the systems he had helped install. "Detaching in 3, 2, 1. The second light separated from the supply ship with a controlled blast from its maneuvering thrusters, immediately engaging its main engines to put distance between the vessels. As Davin had predicted, pursuit was immediate. Security ships launching from the moon's surface, their weapon systems active. "Engaging stealth systems," Jalin announced, his hands moving across the controls with practiced efficiency. "Rerouting power to shields and engines." The second light accelerated away from Seraph 7, its modified engines pushing it faster than its pursuers could match. The stealth systems Jalin and Nari had installed confused the security ship's tracking systems, making their exact position difficult to determine. "They're launching targeting drones," Davin reported from the engine room, "designed to penetrate stealth fields." "I see them," Jalin confirmed. "Evasive maneuvers initiated." The ship banked sharply, narrowly avoiding the first wave of drones. Nari joined Jalin in the cockpit, taking the co-pilot's position with a confidence born of months of practice. "We need to reach the jump point," she said, studying the navigation display. "Once we make the jump to hyperspace, they can't follow without knowing our coordinates." "Working on it," Jalin assured her, his attention fixed on piloting. "But those drones are persistent." A series of impacts shook the ship as several drones made contact, attaching themselves to the hull. "Trackers," Davin warned. "They'll follow us through hyperspace if we don't remove them." "Emergency Protocol 7, Jalin decided after a moment's consideration. "Nari, you remember the sequence?" "Yes," she confirmed, her fingers already moving across the control panel. "Electromagnetic pulse, localized to external hull. It will disable our sensors temporarily, but the drones as well." The pulse discharged with a visible flare of energy around the ship, momentarily disrupting all electronic systems. As predicted, the ship's sensors went dark, but the attached drones fell away, their circuitry fried by the pulse. "Sensors rebooting," Nari reported as systems came back online. "Jump point coordinates locked. Security vessels still in pursuit but falling behind." "Initiating jump sequence," Jalin announced. "Everyone hold on. This might get rough." The second light shuddered as its hyperdrive engaged, stretching the fabric of space around it. For a moment, it seemed as though the security vessels might catch them. Energy weapons lanced through space, grazing the ship's shields. Then, with a final surge of power. The second light leaped into hyperspace, leaving Seraph 7 and its pursuers far behind. In the relative safety of hyperspace, they gathered in the ship's living area. Jalin, assisted by Nari, and drawing on their experience with Davin, carefully removed the neural suppressors from Terrell and Mira's brains. The procedures were successful, though both adults would need time to fully recover from years of neural manipulation. As they recuperated, Terrell and Mira shared their story, how they had been separated from Nari, told she had died, and forced to continue their atmospheric processor research under the control of the suppressors. Their work, intended to benefit all worlds suffering from atmospheric degradation, had been weaponized by the corporations, turned into a tool for controlling colonies through manipulation of their air supply. "We never stopped looking for you," Mira told Nari, holding her daughter close. "Even under suppression, some part of us kept searching, kept hoping." "And I never stopped looking for you," Nari replied. "Even when I couldn't remember my own name, I remembered yours." Days passed as they traveled through hyperspace, putting distance between themselves and the Seraph system. They had no specific destination in mind, only the need to stay beyond the reach of Galvor Enterprises and the other corporations that would seek to reclaim their property. One evening, as they shared a meal in the ship's living area, Terrell raised a question that had been forming in his mind since their escape. "What happens now?" he asked, looking from Nari to Jalin. "We're free, but we're fugitives. Where do we go? What do we do?" Jalin considered this. "We could find a remote world, somewhere outside corporate influence, start new lives under different identities." "And leave others like us to suffer?" Davin challenged. "There are hundreds, perhaps thousands of Ceruleans being used as equipment throughout the sector, not to mention other species facing similar exploitation." "We have evidence now," Nari pointed out. "The suppressors, the facility's records that Davin downloaded, our own testimonies. We could take it to authorities beyond corporate influence." "The Earth Alliance might listen," Jalin suggested. "They've been trying to expand their influence in this sector. A scandal involving forced labor and neural suppression would give them political leverage against the corporations." "It's risky," Mira cautioned. "The corporations have agents everywhere. We'd be exposing ourselves to capture or worse." They debated options late into the night, weighing safety against responsibility, personal freedom against the potential to help others. By morning, a consensus had emerged. They would not hide. They would fight back, using the evidence they had gathered to expose the corporation's practices and free others suffering under neural suppression. Their first step was to contact Dr. Lin, whose assistance had been invaluable in finding Terrell and Mira. Using their secure communication system, they sent a heavily encrypted message outlining their plan and requesting her help in arranging a meeting with Earth Alliance representatives. Her response came days later as they drifted in deep space, conserving fuel and monitoring communications for any sign they were being tracked. "Alliance representatives willing to meet," her message stated. "Neutral location arranged on Europa Station. Arrive incognito. Security guaranteed by Alliance diplomatic protocols. Bring all evidence. Lin." Europa Station orbited Jupiter in Earth's solar system, far from corporate influence, under the direct protection of the Earth Alliance. It was as safe a location as they could hope for, though reaching it would require a journey through multiple systems, each with its own potential dangers. They planned the journey meticulously, plotting a course that avoided major shipping lanes and corporate outposts. The Second Light's stealth capabilities would be crucial, as would the false identification codes Davin had acquired during their escape from Seraph 7. Before they could depart for Europa Station, however, an unexpected transmission reached their ship, a general broadcast on an emergency frequency used by independent vessels throughout the sector. "Attention all ships," the message began. "This is a legal notice regarding the precedent-setting case of Nari Serra versus Galvor Enterprises. The Sector Governance Board has issued its ruling on Galvor's appeal. They gathered around the communication console, tension evident in every face as the message continued. The board has upheld the original ruling of sentience for the individual Nari Sera, and further extends this classification to all ceruleans previously designated as equipment under Sector Trade Agreement 22B. All ceruleans are henceforth recognized as sentient beings with full rights under the Interstellar Rights Compact. Stunned silence gave way to cautious jubilation. Nari turned to Jalan, her eyes wide with disbelief. "We won? Just like that?" "I doubt it was just like that," Jalan said, though he couldn't suppress a smile. Dr. Lin must have been very persuasive with the evidence she had. Or the Earth Alliance exerted pressure, Davin suggested. They've been looking for leverage against the corporations controlling the sector. The transmission continued. Corporate entities currently employing ceruleans under equipment classification are ordered to remove all neural suppression devices and provide fair compensation for past services. Failure to comply will result in severe sanctions under compact enforcement protocols. "They'll find loopholes," Terrell warned, his experience with corporate tactics evident in his tone. "They'll delay, appeal specific provisions, claim technical difficulties." "But it's a start," Mira countered, embracing her husband and daughter simultaneously. "A legal foundation we can build upon." "And we still have our evidence," Davin added. "If the corporations don't comply fully, we can provide proof of their violations." Their journey to Europa Station took on new purpose, not just to seek protection for themselves, but to ensure the board's ruling was enforced, to help other ceruleans transition from property to personhood, to hold accountable those who had profited from their exploitation. The Second Light continued its mission, traveling from system to system, identifying facilities where ceruleans were being used as equipment and ensuring they were freed from neural suppression. Sometimes, this meant negotiating with facility administrators who were genuinely unaware of the legal changes. Other times it required more direct intervention, using Farron's shield and their growing expertise at removing suppressors. At each location, they left behind not just liberated individuals, but knowledge. How to identify and disable suppressors. How to document violations for the enforcement authorities. How to establish new identities and claim the compensation mandated by the board's ruling. Word spread through the sector's underground networks, and soon, the Second Light was known among oppressed communities as a symbol of hope. Other ships joined their efforts, independent operators, former corporate employees with consciences, even a few ceruleans who had escaped suppression years earlier and established lives in the shadows. 6 months after the board's ruling, they finally reached Europa Station. Their mission evolved far beyond their original plan. The Alliance representatives who met them were impressed by the network they had built, the evidence they had gathered, and the changes they had already implemented. "We can offer you sanctuary," the lead representative assured them, after reviewing their documentation. "Permanent residency on any Alliance world, new identities if you desire them, positions within our xenosociology or engineering divisions." Nari, who had continued to grow in confidence and capability throughout their journey, exchanged glances with Jalan. "Thank you," she said sincerely. "But our work isn't finished. There are still ceruleans and others being exploited beyond Alliance reach. The Second Light is needed out there." "We understand," the representative acknowledged. "In that case, we can offer diplomatic credentials, unofficial, but useful in many jurisdictions. And of course, technical support, supplies, information when needed." They accepted these offers gratefully, taking the opportunity to properly refit the Second Light in the station's advanced shipyards. The vessel that emerged was more capable than ever, its stealth systems refined, its medical bay expanded, its living quarters modified to accommodate a growing crew. On the day of their departure from Europa Station, Nari stood on the observation deck, gazing at the massive form of Jupiter beyond the transparent dome. Jalan joined her, respecting her contemplative silence for several minutes before speaking. Having second thoughts? He asked gently. Nari shook her head. No, just thinking about how far we've come. From that container in the Quran market to here. From defective merchandise to this. She gestured to the badge she still wore, the silver nameplate he had made for her, now accompanied by an Alliance diplomatic insignia. You always were more than what they labeled you, Jalin reminded her. The label was the defect, not you. Nari smiled, touching the nameplate thoughtfully. I've been thinking about that label. Returned product. It followed me from owner to owner, marking me as unwanted, rejected. And now? Now I think I'll keep it, Nari decided. But change its meaning. Not returned product, but returned power. Because that's what we're doing, isn't it? Returning power to those it was taken from. Jalin nodded, understanding the significance of her reclamation. I like that. Second light and return power. Pretty good mission statement. As they walked back to the ship, Nari reflected on the journey ahead. There would be challenges, certainly. Corporations adapting their tactics. New forms of exploitation to combat. The constant need to stay one step ahead of those who would silence them. But for the first time since she could remember, the future wasn't something to fear. It was something to build. One rescued life at a time. One restored voice at a time. One act of returned power at a time. The second light departed Europa Station the following morning. Its crew no longer fugitives, but ambassadors of a cause larger than themselves. As the ship accelerated toward its next destination, Nari took her place at the navigation console, plotting a course through the stars that had once seemed so distant and unreachable. Where to first? Jalin asked from the pilot's seat. Nari's fingers moved confidently across the controls, programming coordinates for a system where, according to their intelligence network, a mining operation was still using neural suppressors, despite the board's ruling. There, she said, the determination in her voice matched by the light in her eyes. Let's bring them home. The second light leaped into hyperspace, carrying its message of liberation to stars beyond. And on Nari's workbench, in the ship's expanded workshop, a small project waited for completion, a new badge to replace the old barcode on her jumpsuit, bearing not the label that had defined her past, but the mission that would shape her future. Returned power.